Hey, what's going on? It's Bosco here, as always, joined by Zach from parts unknown.
Parts unknown.
What's going on, man?
This is remote viewing. Nothing much. It's almost 11 o'clock for me at night here. It must be noon for you. I'm in Paris, France. Why don't you say it how you were trying to say it? You're trying to be funny.
Oh,
trying to sound like a
Bali.
I don't know how that would go over well here.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I've been here for about 2 weeks. I will, there's definitely been a little bit of a culture shock. I've never left America, so just, I've never been somewhere where, people don't speak English. So, I'm trying to, relearn my French, and I actually, because at my best, at where I was at my best in school, I was pretty good, but I'm, declined from there. But the thing is, when you're actually out in the real world using it in France, using the language, it's it becomes what is just essentially theory in class to actually practice. And I feel like I've kind of bounced back. It's still hard. The weird thing is I don't wake up in the morning. I never have with French in my mind. Yeah. But this is I wake up and first thing I hear is people speaking French. Even waking up and first time I step out in the morning is kind of jarring because everybody's walking around. I'm oh shit, that's right. Everybody's speaking French here, and I can talk. I can talk and say things.
Yeah,
but
they're all saying, "Oh, we surrender, we surrender."
I can't understand when people say anything, so I don't actually know when they've surrendered. So I just keep fighting. But yeah, I can say things. I can talk. I can ask questions. I'm not very sophisticated, and so it's hard for me to understand. I'm getting better slowly. I'm back to I'm in a weird spot because I said, it's now more practice. I'm now better at speaking the language, better than I've probably ever been, even in my 7 years of studying it. I can probably speak it better now and have a legitimate, somewhat of a conversation better now. But my grammar is still not as good as when I was studying it. Grammar and vocab, I could write better when in class. But now it's more just about speaking it directly. So I don't know, whatever. It's fun. It's weird. And when I went to this festival over the weekend, Le Fête l'Humanité, where it was the Socialist Communist Festival, and all these leftist parties around Europe were there. There was no Americans there. There's some Americans and some English speakers in Paris, but there's no Americans there. Nobody speaking English, so I felt quite a fish out of water, and it's just jarring. But I'm still adjusting. But it's cool. It's cool. You should come out here, and I'll take you around, and we can go to a cafe, and you can have a coffee or something. Then I'll send you on your way.
Wait, hold on. I can have a cafe at a coffee?
You can
have coffee at a cafe?
Yeah, you can have a coffee at a cafe, is what I meant to say.
That's
an espresso. Actually, right before we just started, there's one quick weird little side note. I'm in my aunt's apartment, and down the street, I'm in what is the 18th arrondissement. There's Paris is separated in the districts. I'm in the 18th one. And down the street, the balcony door was open. I heard a woman start screaming bloody murder. Yeah. And I went outside, and there was a fucking scramble, a scene happening down the street at this cafe that's outside, and a woman was screaming she was being murdered by an axe murderer. I seriously thought Jack the Ripper had returned. She's
probably just being dramatic,
That's what I was wondering, but I don't know what happened. It sounded like Jack the Ripper had returned. Even though he's from London, but he returned to Paris. But so yeah, fantastic. You can come visit me.
Fantastic.
I think people here in France would consider your French impression highly offensive.
Yeah, well, I'm a red-blooded American, and I'll give two fucks what some French bastard thinks about my goddamn English. Hey. Bon vivant. Merci beaucoup.
You fit right in.
All right, great. All right, well let's jump right in. So California news. We just
Yeah.
Larry Elder got demolished.
He got elected?
No, he got demolished. He got
Oh.
demolished by the handsome vampire Gavin Newsom in the California recall. But what I think is most fun.
Newsom.
What I think is most funny about this whole recall situation is that,
Or should we do a chart that's like the Chad vampire Newsom versus the Virgin Neighborhood Watch Larry Elder?
Yeah. Well, Larry Elder had this was funny. I saw that he had taken to being called the black face of white supremacy. I mean, Larry Elder also wrote a book called Stupid Black Man.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
so
weird.
He's kind of a piece of shit.
Is he a case? Do you think he's a case of like self-hating, like, you know how people in the Jewish world talk about like self-hating Jews that like kind of have like internalized anti-Semitism, and they kind of like
maybe,
you know,
maybe, but
is this a case of that, like for like a black person, is self-hating? There is the only interview I saw with him that I thought was strange was like. He was talking about Trayvon Martin and was like praising George Zimmerman and saying like Trayvon Martin's a thug and a criminal and George Zimmerman was protecting his neighborhood. And I was like, if you just turned
George Zimmerman about to defend himself from some Skittles, okay? How he was going to throw the Skittles at him in a malicious way.
If you turned the video off and just listened to it, you would think you were talking to like a burly, like Klansman adjacent, like, you know, homeowners association representative, like, you know, screaming from his front porch about, like, you know, non-existent gangs in his neighborhood, you know?
Yeah. Well,
that's what it sounds like.
Well, Larry Elder...
And I'm like, this must be something internalized. Either that or this guy just grew up, like, I don't know.
Well,
like,
I think...
like Clayton Bigsby almost or something.
I think, honestly, with him, it's like a bit of, like...
Is it a grift?
It's a grift. That's what I mean. I think he's
it's an act.
I think he's like a Candace Owens in a way. You know what I mean? Where they basically use their race as a way to discredit any legitimate claims of, you know, societal racism. You know, basically undercutting any legitimate claims of, you know, of the struggles that, you know, minorities and specifically black people have gone through in America, you know? And I think he, like, what I refer to those types as is the, oh, he gets it guy, or the she gets it girl, you know? They use their race as a way to discredit any liberal or left, you know, policy
criticisms.
Yeah,
because I definitely and other things he said, he'd be like, oh, you know, like, there's no such thing as racism. You know, he'd say make statements like that, and then he was like, you know, and then he's like, I'd tell people the truth about race in America, and when they'd respond to me, that's racist, I'd say, oh, but I can't be racist. I'm black. Argument one. Yeah. And it's like, you know, maybe the person isn't saying necessarily that you yourself are racist against black people, but like the arguments and the criticisms he makes, like, is perhaps, I think, a little bit of internalized racism, but, you know, also perhaps he maybe knows what he's doing, and it's a grift
I think he knows full well what he's doing. It's straight up just a grift. I mean, there was funny story. So Trey Parker filmed this video with Dennis Prager and Larry Elder, like way back, like early 2000s, and it was like this whole like I was watching it on Hassan's stream, and basically, like, it was like this whole, like, you know, oh, racism doesn't exist type thing, because I guess back in the day, Trey Parker used to be a bit of a libertarian. And so, you know, but just back to Larry Elder, it's just, in right-wing politics, they'll always constantly talk about how they hate how the left plays on identity politics, or and then they literally go around and do the same thing all the time. That's literally, and that's literally what they're doing. Like, I heard some people saying, like, oh, well, if you make bad claims against Larry Elder, it's it's like racist, or, you know, like, and he just serves as a pawn for the Republican Party, as a minority who can basically espouse any legitimate claims of, you know, systemic racism, you know.
Well, here's something funny I heard about him, is that it's possible that him stepping into the race may have won Gavin Newsom. May have cost the recall vote any traction it had, because a lot of people that might have been like lukewarm on Gavin Newsom and been like, do I still want this guy to be governor? Then they're presented with, like, you know, a Trump-esque candidate, far right, and everybody's like, oh, fuck no. That was my reaction. I could care less about Gavin Newsom really being in office in California, but yeah, I saw that it was most likely it would have been him if Gavin Newsom was recalled. The guy won the largest percentage. I think it was like something 35 or something. He won a little over a third.
Yeah,
it was under 50%, but it was a little over a third. And I was like, that was like a big thing where I was like, oh fuck, no, not this guy. No. That would have been horrible. And I think that's how a lot of people reacted. A lot of people that either didn't care about Gavin Newsom or were lukewarm on it, then saw, oh, here's your replacement, fucking Trump-like conservative far-right media personality. And everybody's like, yeah, no, fuck no. We're not doing that again.
Yeah.
And like, dude, I mean, Gavin Newsom essentially slapped down the recall by a landslide. Like, it was like, I think he had like 65%, almost 2/3, which in most politics is considered a super majority.
I was just looking up the numbers. So basically, he got 5.8 million votes for no on the recall, which is 63.9% of the vote. So, yeah, he's swamped and demolished any chance for Larry Elder. But you're right. I think Larry Elder actually motivated the Democratic base in California to vote for no on the recall, which I think is the right move. We can get into that in a minute, why. But I think, Larry Elder, he's, like I said, he said a lot of bad things. Also, there were some... not accusations.
A lot of bad things.
Okay, Here we go. I just remember what I was going to talk about. So, do you know who Rose McGowan is?
No.
So, Rose McGowan was one of like the people in the Me Too movement who accused Harvey Weinstein of rape, right?
Okay.
A sexual assault. And Rose McGowan campaigned for Larry Elder. Rose McGowan, typically a left, somewhat neo-lib type. And she was campaigning against Gavin Newsom because I guess she claims that there were threats from Gavin Newsom's wife, I think, about, like, what can we do to make this situation go away in regards to the Harvey Weinstein situation. So she ended up stumping for him in a what's it called? Trying to, help him get elected. And what I find interesting is that Larry Elder has accusations himself. And you want to know how he responded to these accusations? He responded by saying, oh, come on. I couldn't have raped her. Do you see how she looks? She's too ugly. Like, the guy is a piece of shit. And, you know, like, also, there was also, something about one of his ex-wives. He pulled a gun on one of his ex-wives.
Wait, this is all Larry Elder?
Yeah.
That does this?
Yeah. So the guy was, the guy was terrible. Now, why I think this was the right move, even though I got my own problems with Gavin Newsom. I don't think he's the best. But, as you know, and this is something me and you have talked about a lot, you know, in the conversation, is just that the whole idea of this recall system is anti-democracy, and as you said, you're a radical for democracy, right, Zach?
Well, I think it could work, but I think it needs to be done a little differently. I think that it required way too little signatures to be pushed to the ballot.
Yeah, like
12% or something. I think it should be at least a quarter of like people that voted have to agree that he should be recalled. And I think that it shouldn't be opened up to like just any old candidate. I think it should be replaced with like the what do they call the vice governor, the lieutenant governor. It shouldn't just be like opened up to any old whoever
who ended up replacing Andrew Cuomo when he resigned.
Mm-hmm. And then when the proper that's the lieutenant governor. And then when the proper election cycle, comes, then the correct vote. But like, it does feel weird that like, anytime you have a problem with the governor, you could in theory just go out and like collect a bunch of enough signatures. And like, it seems like this was happening a lot. And this was like the first time that they're able to get the signatures to do it. And it had been happening since he took office. And, this was the first time they were able to get enough signatures to do so.
It was in response to a lot of like the COVID lockdowns and anger.
It feels what I think is that the recall mechanism itself was put in place with good intentions, pro-democracy good intentions, but it felt like, especially in this case, felt like it was being very much abused for political interests. And not for the interest of the public and the state, but for the interest of like special interest groups and, political parties and to, wage, their, political infighting rather than, looking out for the best interests of the state.
Yeah, no,
go ahead.
No. I totally agree. I think, look, now, going forward, my view is like, all right, yes, we voted no on the recall because there was no alternative that was good.
We voted no on the recall.
Yeah. Well, actually, I didn't because I never got my fucking ballot.
You never got your ballot?
Yeah, I never.
Were you still registered in Santa Cruz?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, you can go into the ballot polling place the day of and just say you never got it. It's not that hard to vote in California, but they might be making moves to try and change that across the country.
Of course. So,
it's not that hard to. But if you really wanted to vote, if you really felt compelled to, you could have gone into any your nearest polling place and said, "Hey, I never got my ballot. I still want to cast a vote." And yeah.
Okay. Well, that's on me. That's on me.
And you should probably change where you're registered to vote too, for future reasons.
Yeah.
Just in case you feel like exercising your constitutional right.
No, I do.
Democratic right.
I do. I think it's important. But yeah, so...
So you want to talk about this and you didn't even vote in it.
I know.
You
I'm
didn't
being
even
honest.
vote.
Look, I could have lied. Yeah. All right?
I feel like you did tell me you did vote in it. Were you lying then?
I was planning on voting no, but fucking, I never got the fucking ballot, and I tried to do it, but then they're like, oh, you're gonna have to drive up to Santa Cruz to do it because you have to vote within where you're registered.
No, you can. I'm telling you, you can go into the polling place. Whoever told you that, gave you the wrong information or you misheard.
That was someone who called
because you can go into any poll.
Someone who called me on behalf of Gavin Newsom saying, "Hey, how are you
voting?"
What?
Gavin Newsom's making direct phone calls. He's like, "I need Alex right now. Get Alex on the phone."
He asked for me specifically. All right. But yeah, so that's all I really wanted to say about the recall. Is that I think it's good that he won.
Look, I have one more thing to say about it in regards to the democratic process. I definitely, in summary, thought that this recall was a little bit of a, political masturbatory exercise in bullshit and just, Republican parties and more right-wingers, like, just, taking out their frustrations for not having much power in the state of California and, using COVID as a way to, take out some of those frustrations to gain a little bit of a foothold. But anyways, the end result. I don't know if you saw this, but, once it was kind of clear through the polls and stuff, even though the polls aren't always accurate, you remember 2016, everybody remembers how the polls were then. But, they were kind of saying, like, okay, this recall's not going to go through. But days before, they started pushing the right-wingers and Republicans and others of that ilk started pushing the narrative that they did with Trump.
Oh,
where that the election's rigged. The election's rigged. And you can't trust the Democrats, and Democrats never win an election because they steal them all, and we Republicans secretly win all because the people secretly want us. They secretly are pulling for the GOP. That's gonna be the narrative moving forward now. It's always gonna be like sow doubt into the electoral process so that basically Republicans will always feel like, well, don't feel bad you lost because the Democrats, they stole this. That to me is pretty alarming. That like every election now is going to be called into question and people aren't going to trust the end results, and it's going to lead to more voter restriction. It's going to make it harder to vote. Thus, what's going to happen here is that they want if their boy wins, then no shenanigans, no fuckery. But if their boy doesn't win, shenanigans and fuckery abound. So that way they never lose an election, and then going into every election cycle, they can say, oh, the other side, the Dems or whoever, they're corrupt, they're in bed with the shadow government or whatever you want to call it, and they can pull strings behind the scenes and control their elections. So either you vote for us if you love democracy, or you vote for the corrupt team that's pulling the strings behind it. They get to use that narrative, and then even if they do continue to either that helps them boost their numbers, by lying to the public, and that helps them naturally and, I guess, honestly boost their numbers. But the other side of that is even if that doesn't happen, they can enact far-reaching voter restrictions and make it harder to vote and just create more voter suppression, thus increasing their chances of winning future elections. So either way, it's a win-win for them. They lose an election, and they get to make the other side look like they're corrupt and evil and stealing, and then in turn, they get to try and make it easier for them to win future elections by interrupting the electoral democratic process with fraudulent claims of voter fraud. So that to me is the most alarming thing of this, is that like this is not a narrative that's going away in the post-Trump era. They're going to be crying about this stolen election with or without proof every time from here on out. And because of that, like elections in America will always kind of be up for. You always kind of have a
shadow of a doubt. It'll always
and thus people won't trust the process as much, and either they'll stop voting as much, or that's what I could see happening. Just that people won't trust the process as much and will stop voting as much, or allow things to be put in place that makes it harder to vote. Yeah. So
basically, we're fucked. We're fucked.
Well, I don't say we're fucked. I just think it's something that's alarming and people got to be aware of, and call it out when you see it. It's bullshit. It's not cool. If you're going to make a claim like that, You need to have proof. You don't go around making allegations of serious crimes towards people in your personal life.
I know Tony down the street. Proof. He got 3 ballots for himself. So what do you say about that, huh?
Yeah, well, you're gonna need proof of it on a mass scale rather than just anecdotes, anecdotes.
That's right wing rhetoric in a nutshell. It's always anecdotal. It's always because they want to use one very small example that is like sometimes you can't even fucking prove because it's anecdotal, and they want to extrapolate it to like the whole system. And yeah, it's gross.
So that's to me the most concerning result of this election. Whatever, Gavin Newsom stays and he's up for re-election in November, and maybe he's going to be the incumbent, so it'll be him versus, God help us if it's Larry Elder again. But, who knows what will happen then. Maybe there'll be a better option.
Yeah,
probably not. It'll probably be Newsom versus a far-right person of some kind.
All right, well, you want to get to the next topic? Sorry.
And I was just going to end it up by saying just every election now is going to have this fucking fucked up kind of baseless narrative and allegation that it's rigged. Especially if the pubs don't get their boy in office or get what they wanted.
Yeah. So, I totally agree. And, just like if you look at, like, what are the major concerns of, right-wingers and Republicans is that a lot of times it's anti-progress. They're obstructionists. They want to, like when you think about this gross-ass fucking Texas abortion bill, right? All they want to do is they want to continue to obstruct, they want to roll things back. They want to constantly negate any progress that gets made in America. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, they can try all they want, but they're unfortunately on the losing side because I believe progress will march on regardless, slowly but surely and steadily.
We're just gonna have to drag these fucking idiots around, kicking and screaming to progress.
Well, they're just gonna make it. Yeah, they're just gonna slow things down, but whatever. Fuck them.
Fuck them. That's a brilliant commentary. Fuck them. All right, so I wanted to talk about for my corporate slam piece this week. I was having a little trouble finding something with a specific corporation, so I wanted to dispel one of these a talking point that's been shared upon mainstream media a lot lately, and I want to argue against it. So here I'm gonna cut in a little clip of some Fox News.
Rolled into the station and millions of Americans are getting kicked off. The enhanced employment benefits put in place because of the COVID pandemic, they expired yesterday, which means 7.5 million Americans will be losing the beefed up $300 government checks. That's a weekly stipend. Business owners say they are hoping the cut in aid will help ease staffing shortages, because there are currently a record. Listen to this, 10.1 million job openings out there. So we'll stop in the free checks, get people back to work. Joining me in studio, Fox News contributor, professor of business and economics at the King's College in Manhattan, Brian Brenberg is back for Brianomics. So, as you pointed out, there are some economic conundrums that are very difficult and some that are very simple to explain. Where does this fall on the difficult to easy spectrum?
This is a no-brainer, obviously, when you have 10 million jobs available. What scares me, or at least concerns me, is that it doesn't appear to be a no-brainer to everybody. We've got this heated debate going on right now about whether we shouldn't be extending these just a little bit longer. I think an America of a previous generation could have looked at this situation and said, we got to get people back to work.
Oh, yeah.
We got 10 million
jobs. Imagine your grandparents?
Yeah, I mean, no, I can't even imagine them considering this.
No.
They would say, let me please take the job, maybe 2, maybe 3. We've got this culture around work now that views it as a punishment. If you have to work for a paycheck in a job you don't like, that's punishment. Wait a second.
No, someone should just
that is
give
the
you
most
money.
modern idea infecting our politics right now. That work somehow has to be totally pleasing to you. No, work's a contribution you make for your family, for your community. You've got to have that kind of attitude. With 10 million jobs available, you got to have the attitude that I want to take one.
Yeah. Like we talked about the incentives.
All right. So this has been a narrative that has been pushed.
What narrative do you have for me now?
Well,
sell me on your narrative.
So, as you may or may not know, extended unemployment benefits have expired. Right? The extra $300 checks that were going out to help people during this time have expired because there's this narrative. We need to get people back to work. They need to go be wage slaves. Go back to work. And, I just been seeing a lot over the, past couple months of shaming people for not wanting to go and take some shitty, low-paying job because they, in this clip, the guy says, you don't need to be fulfilled by your work. Just start somewhere. You gotta start somewhere. And who says that you need to, you gotta, if you need to get an entry-level job. And, those aren't supposed to be supporting families. Those are supposed to be getting your foot in the door, And
so what, he's talking to 16 or 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds? He's talking to, late adolescents? Because that's what you would... that kind of lecture is not what you're giving to people who've been working for, a better part of at least a decade of their life.
I think it's basically directed towards just unemployed people in America.
Yeah, but it sounds like the type of lecture you give to late older teenagers, trying to encourage them to get their first job. Not to people in their, mid-20s to late 30s range, whatever. I'm assuming that's the demographic that would be directed at, but I don't know.
But yeah, and it's just, I don't know, man. It's just, I find it so gross that, we're shaming people for, being unemployed, and, well, not we, but... a lot of mainstream media is, and I think it's wrong. I think the pandemic has caused a lot of people to reevaluate what they want to be doing because they were forced out of their jobs. A lot of people were, luckily I was able to keep my job because I work for the county. But even you worked for the county and you got laid off during the pandemic.
Well, I wasn't technically laid off. I had a set number of hours that I could work.
No. I'm talking about the job you had for the
when parks. I was with the city. Yeah,
the city.
That was I guess technically a layoff, but it was also because I was the newest hire there on a temp position too.
Right.
So I was laid off because of COVID, and I got some nice unemployment payouts for a few weeks, and it was pretty fun. Drinking, getting drunk every night, watching movies, waking up and doing it all over again. But it got old. I mean, how I got laid off because I worked for the first few months or in the first few weeks. Of the lockdown. It must have been around mid-April when they're like, "All right, we're not gonna keep you here," because I was only going in twice a week, and they pay for because they're running skeleton crews. And they'd pay for the rest of the time. and I was rehired by the county in Santa Cruz for a completely different job in mid-July. So it was about 3 months. I spent in lockdown, having a good time, and I got fucking bored.
Right.
So I was all right, well, time to get reemployed.
Right. But
and then with that job, I worked until I ran out of hours because I had I had 1,000 hours. So I actually worked too much. Where's the Fox News story on that? Working too much till you run out of hours.
Well, I think the point being made here is that I don't think that there's a lot of desirable jobs out there. There's not a lot of jobs where people get, where like, oh,
Not
I would
rewarding.
love to work there. You know what I mean? It's a lot of, grunt work, a lot of, wage slave jobs.
Retail, food service, because that's where I see a lot. I've seen these posts online, of like someone pulls up to an Arby's somewhere in like fucking like Western Michigan, and like there's like a sign on the door that says, "We all quit. See ya, suckers. No Arby's today." And and people like post it online. It's funny, some people receive it with like humor. Others, I've seen some more negative comments that are like, "Oh, people are lazy." Work ethic myth and all that. The way, what I think it definitely does tie to the pandemic, because what I've noticed during the pandemic is there was like, and I know we've talked about this before, but it feels like there's been like this like increased sense of urgency, especially in like younger and middle-aged people. Like I'm talking post-college, like people in our age range at least, like let's say post-college to like, just starting a career, looking forward to get your foot in the door and like your
mid to late
potential
20s,
professional. Yeah, the early 30s. And, I think people were just like, okay, content with like, like, okay, I need a job, I need a paycheck, whatever. Like, all right, it's going to be a little bit miserable from time to time. It might not be the most rewarding or most satisfying work. But I think the pandemic hit. And across the board, not just with work, but I think, a lot of people in their own ways were hit with like this sense of, I don't know how else to describe it other than using the word urgency, or just like, like, oh.
Maybe like an existential panic.
Yeah, the pandemic kind of like, I feel like made everybody like feel some weird sense of mortality that like, or felt the forward march of time a little bit more. The quarantine and the pandemic itself like made you be like, oh, time's ticking by. I could die. I could lose everything at any minute. The world could come crumbling down. I'd better do what I always had in mind as my plan, and was just constant throughout the years. Like, okay, I'll get to that. Or slowly working towards like, someone else mentioned to me, like, have you noticed how a lot of people in our age have been getting married or having kids in the past year during COVID? And I was like, I don't know if it's, I don't have any stats to back up that that's like really happening, but my guess, I was like, I think it has to do with that. Like people are like, oh, there's some sense of urgency now. I need to settle down. I need to, those goals that I had set for myself, whether it's to have a family, to have kids, or to have a certain career or whatever, to do something, kind of just felt more urgent and more fleeting. And so returning after the pandemic back to your, same old boring job that you were miserable and wasn't rewarding with, just didn't sound like a good prospect, I think, for a lot of people. And a lot of people wanted to pursue the goals that they had been, putting off, and, before the pandemic struck. And pandemic, I think, put everything in perspective. And people are like, oh, better chase those goals. Real quick, so kind of a side tangent, but right before the pandemic hit, I'm talking like weeks before, there was this girl I was classmates with, and she was like interested in me like dating wise, and she was like talking to me a lot, and we had already like graduated
back to your love life.
we had already graduated like a year prior, and she was like talking to me a lot, and I knew she was interested in me and like from a dating perspective, but like I was just like not in the mood for that. And so, like, I was just kind of like, whatever. And then the pandemic hit, and I, like, I didn't hear from her since. But I had her on Facebook, and just the other week, she posted a picture where she looked like she was in a wedding gown, and she looked like she was 8 months pregnant. Oh, and I was like, damn, shit moved fast for you. Just a month and a half, a year and a half ago, she was definitely single and was definitely, like, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. She was, like, doing some writing program with kids. And, and then just a year and a half later, like, I was potentially thinking about pursuing something with her, but at the end, I just, like, was not in that place at that time.
Right.
Not interested in that kind of relationship. And a year and a half later, she's, like in a wedding gown about to give birth. I was like, geez. And it's just, like, little things like that where I think, like, the pandemic hit and people are like, oh, shit, like, I gotta fucking figure my shit out right now.
Yeah, no, totally.
And for a lot of people that's not returning, back to the story at hand, it's not like returning back to a boring job that's not rewarding, that's leading nowhere, like, it's just not the move after seeing how fragile your life and the world can be. Yeah.
Totally. And I think, that, implementing some sort of UBI, which we're far from, I'm not saying that we're anywhere near it, but I'm saying implementing where people don't feel like they're forced into work and where they can, go, because a lot of times, people who have like families to support or, they have bills to pay, they can't take that time off to go look for more jobs. They're just constantly in this state of work, and I need to constantly grind and work. Because, especially living in fucking California, fucking rent's expensive. Fucking everything's expensive, And I think, I think this is something that we shouldn't really be shaming people for wanting to stay on unemployment for a little longer. I think it's good. It's ultimately good for, the well-being of people writ large,
Yeah. I mean, like, I could talk about this from just personal experience. Like, the pandemic hit, less than a year after I graduated from college. In that time, I had been doing jobs just to get by, just to pay rent, to start paying back my student loans while I kind of, I guess, just figured out what was next, and just so, I was just working jobs that I wasn't, like, doing delivery, driving, when I was working with that company back then. That wasn't something that I wanted to be doing. And I wanted to try and develop my my trade skills that I'd started to learn in college a little bit more, get a bit more sophisticated with that kind of work. And, that's what I was doing when I was laid off with the city. And post-pandemic, it's not something that I'm like, just kind of hobbling between jobs just to get by, just to pay rent. And, you're kind of in this state where you're like, yeah, I'll figure it out when I figure it out, kind of. And in the meantime, I'll just kind of have this job where, it's not too fun, it's not too rewarding, it's not really leading to anything, and my coworkers are kind of miserable too. And like the prospect of returning to something like that just does not look good to me at all. Like, I'm like, I want to get to, actually producing something and, like, stepping into something more rewarding, career-wise, and, like, that's why, like, I'm out here traveling now, because now I can, start writing travel blogs and live out my dream as a travel show host.
Well, and
so
I think,
it's like, but it's like this. That's why I came out here. I didn't want to return to. I could have. When I've been in San Jose for a few months now, I could have gone back to work and been like, all right, fuck it, just get a job, whatever. I mean, I've worked for a short time doing apartment maintenance again. I'm like, I could just go back to that, but no, fuck that. I want to go do something I want to do. I want to fucking, that's why I'm out here and traveling in Paris. I wanted to do something.
You don't like American values, and you're wrong.
I wanted to live my life for me, and I think that's how a lot of people start to feel after this pandemic. They want to, whatever goals they have, whatever, things they wanted to do that they always kind of put to the side, experiences they wanted to have. Why after this pandemic, why just fucking go back to just doing the boring old, same old, waiting for it to come along eventually? I'll get to it eventually. No, it's like, it's fucking time now. Do what you want to do. Travel. Have a family. Pursue that job as a fucking vagabond painter or whatever. And, or start a podcast because you're really stupid,
Yeah. I was literally going to bring it back to that, because I was like, that was part of the reason why we even fucking started doing this, is because, me and you are, we're, we got creative minds, and we've always liked podcasts, and, we wanted to try and forge out and do something on our own that, would, fulfill us in a certain way. I feel like we're putting some content or putting something out into the world, leaving our mark.
And maybe
if it's just a shit stain on the underwear of life, at least we're leaving a mark.
Exactly. So, but everybody has the same feeling these days. Like, few people want to return back to the fucking misery that existed prior to this, especially people our age. Maybe older people have different situations that, they can more easily return to and be like, all right, like, whatever. But that's what corporate America needs to understand is, like, people aren't going to want to return back to essentially these wage slave jobs, things that they're just doing just to get by, just to pay bills, just to pay rent, when after you're coming out of a fucking pandemic that puts everything in perspective, those jobs and doing something like that just kind of doesn't seem as important anymore. It doesn't seem to have as much meaning anymore. What does have meaning is living your life to the fullest extent you want it to be lived to. Exactly. Not to the fullest extent of Starbucks corporate. Or whatever the company is that's, aching for workers right now. Of course, if there's younger people in college that are, not ready for a full-time career and they're focusing on school, those jobs are probably excellent for them. But, for others...
And no, I think I'll just cap it off with this, is that I think that there's this bullshit American narrative of, like, oh, you gotta work hard, you gotta put your nose to the grindstone, you gotta be a productive member of society. Even if you don't like your job, you do it because you're taking care of business. Bullshit. And I think that, maybe, younger people and people in our age bracket don't really find the importance in that, and they don't buy into that bullshit narrative.
Especially, like I said, coming off this pandemic, I think it would just put a lot of things in perspective for people. Like, even if you felt this way prior, like,
totally.
Coming off the pandemic, you're just like, okay, now, like, fucking, it's no longer back to the same old after this,
So maybe it's a good thing in a way.
I think so. Yeah, I think so, and that it kind of forces people to finally pursue those goals they had been putting off.
Yeah,
and to start living for them.
Chase your dreams.
To start living for themselves rather than for society's expectations, because society can come crumbling down, and none of that can matter in like just a minute. You remember how quickly that fucking pandemic bullshit came on? Like the blink of an eye. So just like that.
So to end it off, don't be a wage slave. Live life. And be happy.
Work Ethic Myth. It's a song by Vow, the doom metal band.
All right, well, let's get into some more fun news. Let's start off talking about, because we were kind of joking around about it, but speaking of trying to get a job, let's talk about this clip that went viral recently.
Oh yeah, okay. That's a good lead into that.
Yeah. So if y'all seen it, there's a clip.
See if you can edit it in.
Yeah, all right. Here, I'll edit it in. Right.
I'm interested. Sorry, I quit my job legit 2 days ago. I came up here, took a risk. I'm originally from Ohio.
Did you sneak up here?
No, I didn't sneak in here. I didn't sneak. What do you mean sneak up?
Like on stage? Or you just like?
Yes, I did.
It's one of the sneak videos.
I'm sorry. I just.
Did you print the ticket and stuff?
No, I just needed to talk to you. I'm trying to talk to your brother. I'm trying to talk about business. Trying to get a job. Like I want to do media. I've been trying to get.
What are you good at?
I was 70 dances. I did like
What's
that.
your TikTok
I did that video. Like going like that. Yeah,
Oh, so you really got what it takes.
I don't.
Then why would I
need a mentor.
Well, why would I do that?
I want to be like. I'm 22 years old. I'm just trying.
I bet I can't be a mentor right now. Right in my life, I'm a fuck up myself. I need a mentor. You know what I'm saying? Like I need
connections and you need people be around you. Right?
No, I didn't have connections and people around. I have Jake. That's it. Do you have a brother? Do you have people? Friends?
I don't.
Friends? You got friends. You got amigos.
I don't.
You don't have friends?
I don't. I swear to God. I'm here by myself.
Where are you from?
I'm from Norwalk, Ohio.
You're a good-looking guy, bro. You have friends, bro. You're fucking lying. You have friends. Go make content. Do stuff with your friends. I'm glad you quit your job. It takes balls to do that, bro. But like now you gotta act.
Try to make a step.
But I'm not the guy directly.
You're the guy. You're the guy.
No, bro. My team is this. Relax. I'm not the guy. Like life isn't about handouts. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I'm not trying to get a handout.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to work hard for a little money. No money. I don't know. I can get a job somewhere else. All I want to move to LA.
A goddamn fool if you didn't hire me, and I got what it takes to make this bank the best bank in the metropolitan area. Let me tell you that, sorry. And then they made me the manager that day, and that's
I had zero experience, nothing going for me, and if they said no, I just kept coming back. I just shot my shot, and I feel like this poor guy kind of has like gotten that like weird myth of that work ethic like wrapped in his head, and he's like, all I gotta do is just walk straight up to Mr. Logan Paul and put my hand out and say, hey there, Mr. Logan Paul, I would like a job, sir. And he'd be like, you know what, kid, you got balls, I like that, welcome aboard. But no, he was like, dude, I don't know.
Let's talk about the reality of working, not just in entertainment, but working at large.
Mm-hmm.
We have a friend who works for a major company, right? And he only recently got a promotion this year. I mean, recently, like this month. Okay. And you know, he had been trying to get a promotion. He'd been working hard. He'd been trying to push for a promotion, and he finally got one. Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And you know, it's like people have a warped view of the job market in America. They have a warped view where they feel like, oh, well, you know what? You just don't got enough stick-to-itiveness to get that promotion. And it's like, in reality, bosses don't want to fucking promote people. They don't.
Yeah, well, look, the thing with our friend is he has a college degree and a background in that field, and he has a resume already in that field. This guy that approached Logan Paul has no background in that field, no resume, nothing going for him. And you know, it's like this. When I was in Santa Cruz, when I was bouncing between jobs pre-pandemic, when I was bouncing between jobs pre-pandemic, I actually kind of had a moment like that. I wanted to get hired to do articles for Santa Cruz's Good Times or just one of the local like publications. And I did get in contact with somebody, and I told them that, like, okay, yeah, I majored in English literature and whatnot. And she's like, can you send me a portfolio of your work? And I was like, and she was like, yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, articles I've written? And she's like, yeah, you know, like, send me your portfolio. Like, what do you have to show for yourself in this field? And I was kind of like, I didn't, like, really follow up too much because I was like, okay, I think I need you don't just like go up and be like,
so how
you know,
the
like
fuck are you supposed to get your fucking foot in the door if you've never been hired to write articles or to write shit?
It's not that I have to be hired. It's just at this point, a lot of it has to be punk rock, and you got to DIY it, do it yourself. Like if I realize what I need to do is write articles myself, start a blog, write articles myself, write things myself. It doesn't have to be stuff that I've published. It's just my writing. I need to have a portfolio available, whether it's stuff I was paid for or personal work that then I can then show to somebody and say, hey, I'm a good writer, or I'm a good, you know, journalist, or whatever it might be. I'm good at this, you know, especially in the media. I'm good at this that I'm pursuing. And here's an example of something I've done, you know, and this guy went up essentially empty-handed, and I've learned that lesson too, you know. I wasn't like as dramatic about it and didn't go to make a TikTok. I was kind of hit with a reality check in the same way Logan Paul hit this guy with a reality check.
Let's just also phrase it, because in the context of the TikTok, it starts off with him crying in a car.
Yeah,
it's like, bro, why are you filming yourself crying? You do not look good in this.
Yeah,
like,
filming your L's. Well, he's probably, you know how the internet is. He's probably doing it just for like the views, you know, at this point. Yeah. And there is, like I said, there was one guy that Moist Critical, the YouTube commentator, said that Logan Paul looks too good in this to be true, and you almost like start to suspect that it's like perhaps a publicity stunt set up by his team to make him look good. But I don't think it is. But I think the guy made that video, was hoping to have a grand moment with him where Logan Paul's like, welcome aboard, and he shakes his hand and he's recording it and he catches it on video.
Welcome to the Low Gang.
And he gets to, you know, go and post that online and like have this great viral, like, chase your dreams story, chase a man, you never know, just walk right up and say, give me a job. And instead he got one of him, he got one that went viral, so either way he got his viral video, but in this one he looks like a fucking fool. And a loser by going up and saying, oh, and also in context, he also claimed to have like a $100K a year job too, so that he quit, you know, but then comes up to Logan Paul, who then gives him the reality check, and he's like, okay, you come to me empty-handed, no resume, no No, nothing to show for yourself in this field that you're asking for a job in. Also, I'm like, not that guy. And he gives him sound advice. He's like, look, just do you have friends? He's like, do you have friends? He's like, get with your buddies and make something then. If this is what you're interested in, kind of like what we're doing now. And I was like, that's good advice. He's like, I'm not your guy. I don't know you. I don't know what you do. I don't know anything about you. If you're really interested in pursuing something in this field, get with your buddies, get with some friends, and the guy keeps crying saying he has no friends, and even Logan Paul's like, dude, Logan Paul's like, dude, come on, you have somebody in your life, at least one person that would be willing to make something stupid with you, like me and you right now, so. It's just
we're
his
just
advice.
Perpetually stuck with each other.
his but that's unfortunate. I'm gonna have a nightmare about that tonight. But his advice is sound still regardless. It's like, just start doing it. Like that's the best advice to give him. He's like, just start doing it. I'm not your guy. I can't help you here. Just start working.
I'm putting my tinfoil hat on right now, okay? As you can see, putting it on. I think that this was maybe manufactured by Logan.
Okay.
Because he had been hit up multiple times with this same scenario, maybe. He had maybe, been hit up multiple times, be like, please make me part of the Logan. I'll work for free, I'll do whatever it takes, And then maybe he manufactured this whole thing so that he can be like, see, this is what's going to happen if you come up to me like this. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. Who knows? But anyway, still.
If anything, I think he would have made it to make himself look good and more mature. Because, no doubt, I think with Logan Paul, maybe less of a stint with his brother. But, I think the guy wants to be taken seriously. Kind of like how Justin Bieber remade himself after his younger years to be taken more seriously by, an older audience. I think Logan Paul's trying to run that same course to be taken more seriously by, a audience closer to his age rather than a bunch of 15-year-old dudes on Xbox, whatever.
For sure. All right. Well, let's scurry on over to our Shame on You segment.
All right.
Shame. Boom. Ba-da-da-da-doom. Boom. 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 Shame. Boom. 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 Shame. Shame. Shame on you.
Bravo.
Très bien. Yeah. So this week we're shaming
a whole community.
A whole community.
There's been a couple times when I've wanted to shame a whole online community. And it's been a couple times, but this one was one that's stuck out to me recently.
The Herman Cain Award subreddit.
Yes, that's reddit.com/r/Herman Cain Award.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain what that is? I'm going to bring it up.
All right, so the Herman Cain Award subreddit, I was put on by a friend of mine. Shouts out to Greg. He told me about it, and at first he was like, "Oh man, it's funny. You'll see all these people who pushed a lot of this anti-vax, pro-COVID therapeutics type messaging, and and I was like, okay, all right, I'll check it out. And at first I'll be completely honest, I did find it amusing, but after a while you start to see these stories of, so basically the subreddit is, the format is, okay, here's this person, right? And then
for context, Herman Cain was a right-wing politician who denied COVID heavily and denied, following any guidelines or refused to follow Trump rally. And he got COVID and he died.
Yeah,
He got his curmudgeons, essentially. Right. He rallied against COVID, said it's not serious, we don't have to follow these guidelines, they're silly. Then he got it and he died. Got his curmudgeons, essentially.
Yeah.
So this subreddit was made, I guess, in his honor. Right. Not really in his honor.
So let me explain how the formatting goes. So the formatting is all right, here's a slideshow. They're all set up like slideshows, and basically it'll be someone will go through that person's
usually Facebook posts.
Yeah, it's usually Facebook posts because that's where misinformation gets spread nowadays, mainly, especially for a lot of older folk. And they'll go through their posts, you know, like all the memes they spread and all this stuff, and then it'll end with, "Please pray for our little Johnny Lou. He died he passed away last night because of COVID," and you know, blah blah blah. And then
their post history would be something about how they don't follow the guidelines, wearing a mask is stupid, COVID's not serious, or it's not real, or they're never getting the vaccine, blah blah blah. Right. You know, we've all heard it 100 times now. I don't need to recount it. And then they get COVID and they suffer in the hospital, and sometimes they die, sometimes they recover. But the subreddit is dedicated to basically
shaming them.
Yeah, shaming these people. So we're going to shame them in a meta shape because I find this
a shame circle
to be kind of a gross practice.
No, and wait, real quick, I just want to finish off. When I started to look at it, I went from being like, yeah, these guys got what they deserved, to being like,
they got their curmudgeons.
This is really fucked up. This is like, and then I went and talked to my buddy Greg about this after, and he's like, yeah, I had to stop going because it really made me sad. And, you know, I think any rational person would end up having that feeling, but the subreddit still goes on. How many people are in that subreddit? Why don't you give us some numbers?
Okay, it says it has almost 250,000 subscribers.
So a decent
13,000 users here right now.
So a pretty decent sized community on Reddit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I just think that we shouldn't be shaming these people, just average, everyday people.
Yeah, they're private individuals.
Right. And they buy, and if anything, if you want to shame anything or anybody, you need to shame the people who are pushing these false narratives and this bullshit anti-government, you know, anti-masking, anti-vax. You gotta shame fucking them, not shame the people who fall victim to these bullshit narratives. They're victims at the end of the day, and we shouldn't fucking shame them for fucking dying. That's fucked up, and it's wrong.
I agree. You know, I brought this one up to your attention for a shame segment because in one of our earlier episodes, we talked about, after Rumsfeld's death, we talked about whether or not it's okay to make jokes about people after they die. And I think we were kind of in agreement that someone in the public sphere, be it a politician or a celebrity or you know, an athlete, whatever, when they die, making the jokes about them, they're in the public eye. It's kind of fair game at that point to make the jokes, right? So, and you know, there's a free speech issue there. You know, it's like,
so
it's
Herman
okay.
Cain,
you know,
he deserved any shame. You know, someone like him.
He's in the public eye. He's a public figure. His words have influence, caused people to be more cavalier about COVID, possibly, you know, thus increasing infection rates. And then he got it and he died. So the jokes about him, completely all right. Completely on board. But in that same thing when we were talking about that, we said there is a little bit of like a line that you cross where it goes from making the jokes, you know, whether it's a form of grief if you're making a joke even about somebody you like, to reveling in the death and like taking pleasure in the death.
Which is
kind of crosses a line, and it becomes gross. Even when it is a public figure, but even more so when these are like individuals and people who aren't famous. Your crazy uncle on Facebook who got caught up in the Fox News cyclone and the Donald Trump nonsense and you know, went full anti-COVID regulations and you know, didn't believe it. And then the poor guy, you know, God bless his soul, he got his COVID and then he ends up in the hospital, and it's like that. It's like they're
you know what I think is actually like the antithesis to actually a different subreddit community, but it's like the antithesis to this Herman Cain Award subreddit is the QAnon casualty subreddit, which I think is in a more appropriate way to kind of go about this, where you kind of where people talk about family members and close people who have fallen down
fallen victim to these narratives.
Right.
The people that deserve the shame is, like you said, it's the people that peddle this, that orchestrate these narratives, that peddle it, that profit off of it, that profit off the manipulation, that profit off the lies.
Right.
And their followers are merely victims.
Right.
The people that deserve the mockery and the ridicule and the shame on them is the people that have created this environment that has allowed people to become victim to misinformation and thus victim to the pandemic.
Right. So let's take an example of someone who's been a purveyor of misinformation recently. You go ahead and finish your point.
I was gonna say, like, I'm looking at this sub right now. Like, so this one bothers me. Because I understand, like, look, you brought up the QAnon casualties, and I understand that people here on this sub might just be venting in a way that they're mad that people aren't following COVID guidelines and thus the pandemic continues. Everybody's mad about the pandemic, regardless of what you believe about it or not. And this, to me, kind of feels like an outlet for people to find catharsis in the rage and the frustration that comes from the pandemic. But here's one. It's labeled as a meme / shit post, but I don't fucking know. It's on the front page. It's number 2 as I'm looking. It says Faces of Denial and Regret, Part 4. And you open it, and it's just a bunch of average-looking people, nobody famous, nobody of note, average-looking, middle-aged people in a hospital bed with, ventilators and tubes strapped on them. And it's not a pleasant picture to look at. It's like you're looking at people suffering. And I'm like, are people on this subreddit taking joy in others suffering? Like, that's kind of fucked up. Like, to post these pictures of people in the hospital beds, literally, like, suffering and struggling and fighting for their lives, like, regardless of their views, like, they're being put through hell and torture and, like, taking joy and reveling in their suffering is kind of fucking gross, and I don't like it. And this sub, probably a lot of people, this sub in a couple of years from now, I think will kind of be looked back as, like, one of the grosser aspects of how people reacted to the pandemic and pandemic denialists. So,
right.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna bring up someone who's been a purveyor of a lot of this vaccine hesitancy, promoting unproven COVID therapeutics. We're gonna talk about. I'm gonna talk about this guy Brett Weinstein. He's been also one of the ones that have been in Joe Rogan's ear, like influencing him a lot in a lot of his views, especially like on ivermectin and shit like that. So, I was looking this up the other day, and you can see we're not going to argue. I'm not going to argue his points or whatever. I'm just going to talk about what he makes in Patreon, right? And you can see the jump up and how basically pushing these, narratives of vaccine hesitancy and therapeutics results in monetary gain, right? So, so if you look at the graph, I'll send this to you. From April 21 to now, he has had a 135% uptick in his Patreon count to about $4,000 and 4,000 Patreon members, up from 1,500 Patreon subscribers in early March. Now he, because of a lot of the, Joe Rogan's had him on a lot now, and given the Chuds some validity to this guy who's a evolutionary scientist. Him and his wife are both evolutionary biologists. And so they think, well, I'm a PhD and I'm a doctor, so I can talk about this, right? But it's like, you're a fucking evolutionary biologist. Calm down, all right? Now they're selling a book, right, to further monetize this bullshit that they've been spreading, right? So you can see, just even with this one person, you can see how financially viable it is to push these narratives and how they make money off of basically people being misinformed.
Well, I wonder why this is like such a like pervasive topic. And there's something I saw a while ago about how like the anti-vax, anti-COVID stuff, or anti-COVID regulations, I should say, because I'm not going to assume we're all anti-COVID here, but anti-COVID guidelines, anti-COVID guidelines and the anti-vax stuff. And I'm like, why is this like so pervasive? Like, why is this everywhere? Like, even if you really believe it, like, you can't be like, why is this like the main media you're consuming online? Like, why is it? And I saw something talking about how like everything, all online content is vying for your attention, and that you know, whether it's meme pages on Facebook or podcasts as big as Joe Rogan, and somehow the anti-COVID guidelines, anti-COVID regulations, and the anti-vax stuff is just very provocative. It's very sensationalist. It's very, very much like a fierce topic that people love to latch on to.
And it plays on the skepticism of authority, of like, challenge, you know what I mean? It plays on that.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course. But anything from social media pages to social media sites themselves to big time podcasts to major news conglomerates like Fox News to smaller ones, they are all vying for your attention. Anti-COVID regulations and anti-vaccine stuff is very sensationalist and catches people's attention. Therefore, they stand to gain a profit or to boost their brand.
Hold on, real quick. I love that I get to hear the Euro sirens in the background.
Oh, you heard it? You're gonna go pick up another COVID victim.
All right, go on. Sorry.
The door's closed. Oh man, you heard it. Okay, leave it in the podcast.
I want to.
Dude,
we should shame the French sirens. That's also on our channel. But yes.
But yeah, like these the anti-COVID regulations and the anti-vaccine stuff keep people's attention, and because podcasts, social media, websites, pages, news stations, they make money off of your attention. They've all just kind of latched onto this because they stand to make a profit the more engaged you are with their content. And the anti-vax stuff and the anti-COVID stuff happens to be very engaging. So they've all kind of just been like, yeah, it's sexy and it gets the views. It gets the views, which the views nowadays equals profit. Right. So they get the views through the stuff. It gets the profits. Like Joe Rogan. Come on, have you ever heard Joe Rogan other than Elton? I guess he does get stuck on topics, but I've heard people talking about his podcast, or I've heard the clips. Like it's literally his favorite topic of every day, every episode. He loves the vaccine, anti-vax stuff. Essentially, he loves to talk vaccine, and I don't think he wants to drift away from it because I think the base of his audience, the chuds, love to hear it, you know. And if he drifts away from it, if he backs off from it, if he's just, you know, if he just says, look, it's probably the best move to get vaccinated. You know, I had COVID, I'm fine, but it sucked. Whatever, you know, if he does that and backs off and moves on and goes back to silly old Joe Rogan taking shots of DMT on a pool table while eating elk meat. You know, people will still tune in for that, but right now he's getting the views with his vaccination conversations on every podcast, and when he has someone on to talk about it, he gets the views. Same thing with Fox News when they talk about it, or the anti-COVID stuff, they get the views.
Just look in the comment sections of any video where Joe Rogan discuss, you know, like ivermectin or the vaccine or whatever, and you'll see them all be like, "Thank God Joe's telling the truth." You know, he's given a platform to truth tellers, and it's like, no, it's only something that you have already thought yourself, and you just want to hear someone of prominence repeat that so that you can feel better about not taking the vaccine.
You mean the brilliant, intelligent discourse that is YouTube comments? Read those.
Yeah.
Known for their astute takes.
Sometimes you have to, all right?
Well, back to the sub. I do agree with you, and I do think that, you know, the real people that are the predators here is the people preying off the, fear of vaccinations and the fear of the COVID regulations. Those are the real predators, the people that are preying on those fears, not the people who Herman Cain Award and other, others like it, are targeting just random people on Facebook. And I've seen things posted to online on other Reddits, like the one I like to follow, Subreddit Drama, has brought up this sub a couple times, because the sub has continually asked, even though the members will deny it and say, oh, it's public on Facebook, anybody on Facebook can see it. It could be anybody, not our members. But because people are dying, their family members are memorializing them, and they're COVID denialism, vaccine denialism, to their eventual COVID death is all public on Facebook. Then their families are getting stormed. Their families are getting stormed and mocked.
And doxxed.
Doxxed. And all kinds of shitty stuff happens to, a family in mourning, that, never had any attention on them, public attention on them before, now have that eye turned on them. So, it just seems like they're not helping anything. These Herman Cain Awards, subreddits, and anything else like them, you guys aren't helping anything. It's not making the situation better. You're not gonna... shame is a powerful tool, but in this case, like, you're not gonna... It's not helping it. It's just causing more suffering. It's causing more suffering and more pain. It's gross.
You know what's funny is that what I think about immediately when I think about this subreddit is I think of, you remember like how like the Westboro Baptist Church used to protest like soldiers' funerals and stuff?
Mm.
It's like almost in like that same vein when you think about it. You know what I mean? It's gross. So shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame on you, Herman Cain Award. Find a better way to spend your time. Find a better way to fight the pandemic. There's got to be better ways to fight this pandemic, to help your community than doing something gross like this online.
Shame.
Just stop. There's better ways to spend your energy. It's a shameful thing to mock people who suffered and died of COVID, especially when they're not in a public figure.
So
shame on that. True. And so basically, there's basically what they've been warning about in America, and it's what certain news outlets or certain people have been warning about in America since the vaccine started rolling out en masse, which is a vaccine passport to go do things, whether it's going to the restaurant or going to the movies or going to a concert, and it really does exist here. Like, you really do have to have it. And it's kind of weird. And earlier today when I was walking back to the apartment, I saw a little sticker on a light post and it said "Non au pass sanitaire," and it like no to the pass sanitaire, and it had the S's, the SS in pass, with the S, the Nazis SS, like the SWAT, like, but as in implying that the pass sanitaire is like a
papers.
Exactly, like a and I thought it was kind of funny, but I wanted to ask you what you thought of it, and because I don't think I necessarily fully agree with it. I think it's kind of like, it does have a little bit of a ring of like, where are your papers now? Can we see your papers?
I actually disagree. I think it's a good thing.
Do you think the vaccine passports are a good thing?
I do.
For going to doing something as mundane as eating on the balcony at a restaurant, eating outside at the restaurant.
I think. Yeah? I think right now for where it is, it's an incentive. It's an incentive. Here in America, you French bastard. Joe Biden just, he recently passed the vaccine mandates. I think it's for every federal worker and for every company that's over 100 people, and every private company. And I think it's ultimately good. I think it's a way for the government to prevent harm. And so, yes, is that fucking annoying that you go someplace and you're like, I need to have this vaccine card, right? I need to have it. It is it does, have a ring of the where is your papers type thing, but
it kind of feels a little police state-esque.
But here's the thing, is that I think that serves as an incentive where it's not forced upon the people, but it serves as an incentive for people to get vaccinated. It's like, okay, you don't get vaccinated, then you don't get to participate.
Which is true because
public activity and social life.
It is true though, because after they made the pass sanitaire, like vaccination rates in France spiked up, and now I think they've passed the 80% vaccination rate in France here, which is pretty good. And so
you take away something that people want, right? But you don't like it's just like it's like the carrot and the stick, you know what I mean? But
even I've heard too some criticisms that like a lot of restaurateurs don't like it because they feel like it kind of, you know, restaurants culture and cafe culture is very, you know, important here and is a big part of like social life, and they feel like it kind of puts a grim cloud or like takes away from the restaurant and cafe experience having these past sanitaires. A lot of restaurateurs really don't like it. The restaurant owners and people that work in restaurants really don't like it
because they're forced to turn away some people who don't have their fucking cards on
them. And they don't like having it be a part of their business that they have to check this. They're not police. They feel like it takes away. It takes away from the experiences provided to you at a cafe or a restaurant.
Right, and I totally get that, but I think that this is just the realities of living in a post-COVID society. Well, we're still not posted, but, you know, in a COVID society, a world, okay? I just think that this is... Look, have you seen, like, some of the shit, like, Australia's been doing? Like, where it's, like...
They're pretty intense about it over there.
Like, I think that's, like, it's a little much. It's a little much. But I think, you know, let's get away from the social aspect of it, right? Why does the government want people to get the vaccines? They want it because they want business to return as usual. They want business as usual to return, right? They want, you know, that's why I think it's funny when people question the vaccine and its efficacy. I'm like, they have every incentive for the vaccine to work. Because if the vaccine works, that means people don't have an excuse to not go back into their wage slave jobs, right? They don't have any excuse anymore that, you know, and
the longer the pandemic continues, the more the economy cripples, which is like most governments, be it right wing or left wing's main concern, you know, main focus.
Right, money
and
the more And so look, does it kind of it's like, you know, it would be like having, you know, if okay, this is kind of a weird example, but like if you're about to have sex and it's like, oh well, we have to sign a consent form. You know what I mean? And you basically have to go through legal paperwork before you have sex, right?
The libertarians warned us about.
But, you know, I think it's important because, you know, I think it's good for the betterment of society for everyone to be vaccinated, the greater good. And sometimes the government has to act in the best interest of their people, even when you're kind of giving me crazy eyes with that.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I was thinking about something. Continue on. I just thought of something. Not related to what you're saying. I'm sorry that I came.
No, you were just giving me eyes like you're like, oh shit, here comes authoritarian.
No. I'm sorry. I just it sounded something else cross along the same vein. But go ahead.
So, you know, I just think that sometimes the government has to protect the citizenry from themselves. And I think that this is I think that's actually a very good policy. I think that is the best way to encourage people to get the vaccine. Is you go like, okay, look, you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it, but then that means you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything because, you know, businesses don't want to put their customers at risk. It's a risk assessment deal for businesses, you know?
Yeah. Well, Here's a little anecdote. The one I thought of as you were talking, where I was like, this actually did make me feel like almost where I was like, okay, this does feel somewhat police state-esque. So, in past episodes when we've talked about things like, surveillance states stuff through like, the Apple thing with their phone monitoring, looking through the pictures, the way police states or surveillance states start, is they get a little bit at the time, and so here's what happened. The anecdote that I thought of that I made the look for, because it just crossed my mind. One of the first days I was here, it was the third or fourth day. This only happened once. After we were sitting at a cafe where the waiter had followed the law and to the letter and checked our vaccine passes. So several minutes later, I'm sitting there and there's a guy in plain clothes and he's like talking to me in French, and I'm still like, it takes me a moment to understand what people are saying, so I'm like looking at him and he's like, passe sanitaire, and I'm like, what? And he was in plain clothes and I was like, dude, who are you? And then like I pretty much like asked him, and then he like pointed and he had like a little police armband, but he was in plain clothes. And he was like under his sleeve, yeah. And he like pointed it, and I was like, "Oh shit!" So I took it out, and I said it in French. I'm like, "Oh, I have an American vaccine card." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then and he was with a group of 2 or 3 others, plainclothes cops, but cops nonetheless. They had little badges hidden, going around discreetly checking the pass sanitaire, discreetly doing that. And then he was just like, "Oh, bonjour," and he like took off, and I was like, "Dude, that's a little eerie."
And then he shoved his baguette up his ass, and then he went riding on his little bicycle.
Well, the undercover cops in France are very comical. Yeah, they're very obvious and very comical like that. But no, essentially it was plainclothes cops going around and asking to see him after the waiter had already checked it.
Well,
so that was just one time it happened in all fairness, but that moment did kind of have a ring to a police state a little bit too. Yeah. And I don't know if I could support something like that in America or anywhere really, but I don't know if I like it. I'm not for it.
I completely understand.
I mean, I'm vaccinated, so it doesn't really affect me.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's why that's why I think you're. I know you're looking at it more from an anti-authoritarian lens, but the thing is that like I understand what those cops are doing, even though fucking all cops are bastard, even French cops.
Even the French cops?
Yeah.
Dude, some of them are strapped here, like, really random. Some of them, like, stand on the corner with, like, fucking, like, giant, like, fucking assault rifles. Like, some of them are straight up strapped here. Like, have a beret on. They have a beret on. I know, but they'll just be standing at, like, random fucking corners on the street, just there, like...
Haven't you ever seen, there was, like...
But a little beret, bulletproof vest, like, a giant, like, fucking Call of Duty looking fucking... assault rifle, like fucking extendo clip of laser pointer. I'm like, dude, what is this guy ready for?
There was cops like that on. I remember seeing, when we were studying and when I was studying for my degree, we looked at like cops who are outwardly looking militaristic like that, and there was an example of that in the Bay Area on BART. There were cops dressed in like full like they're going to war. Yeah, like you said, bulletproof vest, AR, where they have the clip where it kind of just hangs like this, or it's like, what's up, going good? You know what I mean? I think that does cause like an air of kind of like, oh, is this the world we live in right now? And sorry, just to go back to your point. I want to say that, like, yes, of course, police state measures get used first in a way where someone like me would agree with why they would do that. But then it gives them further credence to enact it at a later point for something you may not agree with. Right? I may not agree with, right? And yes, that is the dangers of giving power to a police state. That's why I think the best way to do it is what Joe Biden did, which is just make it a vaccine mandate and just be done with it. Just be done with it.
I've heard that some cities in America have started a version of the pass sanitaire like it's not as extensive, and you don't technically have to be vaccinated. But if you don't want to get vaccinated, you have to provide like a negative COVID test anytime you want to. And it's not as extensive. I don't think it applies to like restaurants. It's just like venues and theaters and stuff like that, like big, venues for shows, and maybe some restaurants. I don't know. It's like New York City, and I think San Francisco started a version of it. And it's not that they necessarily have to be vaccinated, but you have to, like, if you choose not to provide your proof of vaccination, you have to provide a negative COVID test every time. So it's not like you have to get vaccinated, but like you're gonna have to come in on every day, like every other day. Every time you want to go do something, you got to go get a COVID test if you're not vaccinated.
Right. Which I think is a fair workaround. That's a fair. It's all about
Is there a middle ground for the police state vaccine checks?
Yeah, maybe. Now honestly thinking about it, maybe that's like the French way of doing it is maybe a little much, but I think working towards getting everyone vaccinated is the most important goal. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. I thought maybe I was very confident in feeling the way I did, but now thinking about it, I kind of see what you're talking about. It is a kind of scary precedent to set.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I like it, but anyways, no conspiracy theory or mystery this week. So.
Yeah, next week.
Next week, because it takes me a little bit of time to look into it, and just because I've been busy exploring Paui, I don't have time to research conspiracy theories and mysteries. But you know what? I hope to venture to the catacombs soon. Ooh. And I feel like that could be a good inspiring for, something creepy, a creepy mystery or conspiracy theory.
Creepy pasted.
Yeah. I might look into mysteries and stuff around Paris itself. I know there's definitely Paris has a lot of weird, creepy stuff, like mysteries or secret societies or all kinds of.
I was actually gonna do. I was originally gonna do it for this podcast, but I didn't have enough time to research it. But I'm also going to be doing a real conspiracy theory on the next episode about the CIA's influence in movies and media. Because I just kind of
Operation Mockingbird.
No, but like more so like how like the CIA like kind of and FBI like how they kind of like they are like heavily involved in certain media projects like Call of Duty. Zero Dark 30 is like the most recent like blaring example where the government basically had the sign off on the script, you know what I mean? But I'm gonna do a huge deep dive onto all of that on the next episode, so you can look forward to that. Also, just before we go, I want to give a RIP.
Oh, remember to remind people about if they have any ideas for potential conspiracy theories or mysteries or any topics.
Bash Bros Podcast at protonmail.com.
Critiques, reviews, suggestions for improvement, hate mail, suggestions for topics. We want it all. Everything. Whatever you want to give us. If you just hate us and want us to hear it, please. Have we got anything yet? I'm assuming no.
Here, let's see. Let me look real quick. Let me see.
What is it? One more time.
Okay, wait, hold on.
The email.
Hold on. And I'm going to cut this out. It's based in Zurich.
Nice.
Proton Mail. Okay, hold on 1 sec. I'm actually curious to see if we got any hate mail.
Fuck you, you dumbass motherfucker. Not or nothing. Kill yourselves.
No, nothing yet, unfortunately.
Well, one day. Drop what it is. So
it's Bash Brothers Pod. I keep on saying the wrong thing. Bash Brothers Pod at protonmail.com. Again, Bash Brothers Pod at protonmail.com. And I promise this time I will put it in the description. I just forgot last time.
Please
I'll put it in all the descriptions we want the hate mail. All right. So, but before we go, I just want to give an RIP to, celebrity deaths. Don't not all the time they hit me, but Michael K. Williams, who played Omar Little on The Wire, R.I.P. It's, suspected it might be possibly having something to do with fentanyl. There was recently...
Oh, really?
Yeah, recently there was comedians in L.A. Who were doing cocaine, and they and a couple of them had actually died of a fentanyl overdose because there's
it's cut.
Yeah. So also, if you guys do drugs, please be safe because it seems like there's been a lot of fentanyl going around. And
for the record, in case people might not know, this might be just a random little tidbit of you can go online or to your local social service facility that is meant for harm reduction, and you can find fentanyl test strips, and they usually give them out for free at your local social services or any harm reduction clinics. You can get fentanyl test strips to test if you're concerned about your drugs. Having fentanyl, because I know people, both personally and famous public figures who have died recently from fentanyl. It's a real thing. It's in the water.
It's in the water.
It's in the air.
But Michael K. Williams, man, like that character. I know you haven't watched The Wire through.
I've seen enough episodes of The Wire to know who Omar is. Yeah.
But Omar, that character is just like one of the coolest characters in any like episodic TV show ever. Mm-hmm. It's like he's such like a he's like a phenomenon in that show. He's awesome, and I just it's just sad that he passed away. So shouts out to him, and shouts out to Norm Macdonald too.
Rest in peace, Norm Macdonald.
Him and his dry wit, always got me. If you haven't seen it, check out Norm Macdonald doing the Aristocrats joke. He does a good version of it. You just look up Norm Macdonald on YouTube. He's got a lot of great clips of his stand up and stuff like that out there. So show him some love. But yeah, so that's it for this week.
Rest in peace, Norm Macdonald. Rest in peace,
Michael K. Williams.
Michael K. Williams. Thank you.
And yeah. Well, it's good to hear from you again, Zach, and hopefully we can do this again next week.
Yeah, I'll have some cool Paris related stuff to tell you. So.
All right, cool.
Can look forward to that. I know you don't have a lot to look forward to. You're waiting on that. Yeah. I was thinking about buying a baguette here and shipping it to you in Morgan Hill.
Hell yeah, dude. Get me some of that fucking cheese, dog. I want that fucking...
Yeah. Oh, bro, the cheese here is the bomb. It's the bomb.
I'm jelly. All right. So that's going to do it for us this week. We're out of here. Peace.
Thank you for listening.